Hello and welcome to this special broadcast live here on Moneycontrol. I'm Stacy Pereira and with me is Santosh Nair joining us, and we are here to discuss that in principle approval that ITC's board has given for the demerger of its hotels business. Now, the proposed restructuring would pave the way for the hotels business to operate as a separate entity, although the new entity would be a majority owned directly by the company shareholders. At least that's what has come out with. We get to understand that 60% will probably be what will be out, and 40% stake is what the company will retain with itself. But this has been a long-standing ask, one could say, from shareholders as well, and it gives an opportunity to the shareholders now. Some value unlocking is what we can expect. What really, take us through how this has transpired, 5 years in the works, what really has happened and what are we going to get to see now?
Well, first let's look at the way the market has reacted to this announcement. The stock has gained close to about 48% so far this year, and last 2 days we've been seeing a lot of selling pressure. Now, it's been a kind of a mixed reaction from the market, because what analysts were expecting actually was a very simple demerger. So, a mirror demerger as they call it, which means that in the new entity, shareholders will hold shares in the same proportion as they used to in the parent company. Now, that hasn't happened. It's slightly convoluted in the sense that ITC will still hold 40% in the new structure. Now, it doesn't really change things for minority shareholders if you look at it, because they will hold 60% in the new structure directly, and the remaining 40% by way of their shareholding in ITC, but that's still a little complicated way.
Right.
Now, what was the biggest concern as far as the market went is that hotels was a very small portion of the company's revenues, just about 4%, but at the same time it was consuming a lot of capital, close to about 20%. So, main concern that market had was about capital allocation. Now, to a certain extent that issue has been addressed with ITC deciding to demerge the hotel business, but with that I think one of the key triggers for the stock, that is now behind,
put aside.
Right. This is something the market had been expecting for a while, and to a large extent it would have already got priced into the stock price. As we saw, has been one of the best performers. So, what we are seeing right now is more of a profit booking now that the main event is through.
Right.
And let's also not forget that the stock, because it's run up so much now, valuations are not as cheap. 2 years back they were very cheap for a host of reasons, but now the market perceives that at about 30 or 32%, 1 year forward earning. This is, you can't really call the stock cheap. So, a lot of people who had got into the stock, they are now taking some money off the table. They are booking profits for now, because of which you are seeing the stock being under pressure over the last couple of days.
Let's look at the financials a little bit. Now, we do know that this hotel business, and you were just pointing out, it contributes less than 5% to the revenues as well as EBIT over the last decade. In fact, not been that the one that is contributing any of any sort, and in fact even the capex though from the company side has been on the larger amount, 20% of its capex going just on the hotels business. So, does this come as a respite now to the shareholders, saying that this is going to be completely off, or because they've decided to retain, that is something that is going to be held back, and they're going to have to recalibrate that whole strategy for them?
Now, okay, there is some relief, definitely there is relief, but again 40% will be held by ITC. So, as I said, it's not a clean demerger in that sense. There's some bit of overhang still. At the same time, what this does, at least for now, is clearly make ITC's capital allocation slightly better than what it was earlier. And this also happens to be a time when actually the hotel business, the hospitality business is really booming. So, the kind of investments that ITC now puts into ITC hotels, it's very likely that the returns may be much better, because you've already seen a big re-rating of hotel stocks, be it Indian hotels and a host of other hotels. So, now the kind of money that ITC puts into the hotel business, the returns obviously should be much better. But if you look at ITC as a standalone, apart from its hotels at this point in time, it's a mix of tobacco as well as FMCG. The FMCG business is the one which has been doing well. Tobacco is a business which most institutional investors, on the face of it, they don't really want to be very closely associated with it. But if you see over the last 6 quarters, actually foreign institutional holding in ITC has gone up by close to about 10 percentage point. It was about 9 odd percent, 9 or close to 10, and now it's about 19 to 20%. So back in 2014-15, you had this problem of ESG, the concerns around all that, which led to many funds selling the stake. But those concerns now seem to have abated. That could perhaps explain why institutions are now, once again getting into the IIT. But again, at ITC, it's tobacco and FMCG. Although there's some analysts feel that the FMCG business, which in fact has been doing well, there's been a significant improvement in its performance. So that should actually be carved out. Only then will it get the true valuation of a FMCG company, which is like 50%, 50 times 1 year forward. And
so is that something that we could expect, maybe a further splitting of even the FMCG business? Is that something that could
no, because investors are saying that for hotels, something like hotels, which is the most obvious thing to do, it's taken close to about 5 years for the company to do that. So the whichever business, if at all the company plans to carve it out as a separate business, that's again going to be a very, very long drawn process.
Right, but we've been seeing the stock get battered yesterday in the last bit of trade and also today morning. But brokerages on the other side have cheered this move. We've seen overweight call by Morgan Stanley, all the others saying that there is a value unlocking that can take place at this point. So, but was this decision to not go with a full split that has for this business really made that difference, or were they already expecting that, or has it come as a negative surprise at this point?
Somewhat, I would say it was not expected, because the view was that largely they would do a very simple demerger. So that is a bit of a disappointment. But as I said, it's something better than nothing. A lot of capital was early going into it. At some point, it's very likely, there is speculation that probably ITC might then get a strategic buyer and may decide to further. But these are all in the realms of speculation at this point.
To take that little bit of speculation further, what could be the pricing of this new entity or the demerged entity? There are analysts that are pegging it at this thing. Could you throw some light on what would we really see this at?
So even MC Pro analysts Nandish Shah and Bharat Jiani, they have put out a report on ITC today. So based on the valuations that companies like Indian Hotels and Chalet Hotels are getting, probably the fair value would be roughly around 23 rupees. That is based on a EV to EBITDA ratio of about 25 times. Based on that, and ITC is expected to, the hotel business is expected to report revenues of about 1,000 crore in FY25. So this is roughly what the calculations
are calculating. And by when are we going to hear this? I believe there's a AGM that is likely to happen at the end of this week. So what all will we get to hear there? What should investors really be looking out for then?
Well, the AGM is usually a very, very routine affair in that sense. They don't make it, most of the time they don't make any big announcements in that. So I really wouldn't be able to hazard a guess on that one.
Right, but we will get to hear something on this front. On
definitely,
the demerger,
on the demerger would definitely be there.
Date or something of that sort.
And answer to your earlier question is, right now the analysts are estimating the value of the hotel business anywhere between 18 and 25 rupees. That's a broad range. Broad range.
Right, that we could see. And it is it overpriced? Is it reasonably valued? How would you place that to comparison?
That you would, it again depends on a lot of factors. The price discovery will happen, and then after that one needs to see. But it's very likely that some of the investors who are right now invested in ITC, they may not want to be invested in the hotels business. So it's very likely that they may decide to move out. So in the short term, there could be some technical factors as well, because index funds also, which have bought ITC, right, they will also get shares of ITC hotels, which they may not want.
Right. Also, while this whole demerger talk was happening, we did also for briefly ITC tipped HUL. So let's talk about that as that largest consumer company, a leader in the stock market of that sort. What happens to that if this demerger takes place? The market capitalization, what are the other things that would come into effect that we need to be looking out for?
Well, I don't think market capitalization will be affected too much. The whole thing will boil down to valuations. Now, right. HUL, like most other FMCG companies, they're valued anywhere between 55 to 60 times 1 year forward earnings, and the combined ITC, which is business plus FMCG, that's valued at around 32 times 1 year forward. So, more than the market cap, but yes, that's also one way of seeing how the companies are valued. But I think it will again depend on the valuation investors want to give in terms of how they see the visibility for the FMCG business as well as the tobacco business, because both businesses are quite different. If you see, the entire product portfolio is very different. While you may call them FMCG, ITC is FMCG plus tobacco. So that's the big difference.
Right. Well, so a lot to look forward to. This demerger definitely will come into effect in a while, and we're going to have to see what that price discovery then comes off for the hotels business. But hope this was informative and gave you some sense of what this demerger is really going to look like, especially for ITC. It has been that meme stock, one could call it, of late. That's what it got into, but now perhaps through these different measures trying to regain some kind of trust with its shareholders. But we'll have to look forward to see how this really all pans out. But with that, it's a wrap. Thanks so much for tuning in.